Hello, my name is Menon Dwarka, and I want to welcome you to the third edition of Inside the Song New Music Final Fridays with the members of Grupo Santos. Today we'll be celebrating the release of a new track by the band that's part of their upcoming album, Santos 4. Every month for the next several months on Final Fridays, the band will be sitting down to talk about a new song from the album and its release to the public. So we're here with everybody at Grupo Los Santos, and we're here on this last Inside the Song New Music Final Fridays, and we're going to discuss a specific track. Who wants to pronounce the name of this track?
Casí Quince.
Okay, and what is there a translation here, William, of what that means?
It means almost 15.
Okay.
Which is sadly has nothing to do with anything anymore. But at the time, it seemed relevant. It was written in 2012, and we were almost 15 because we started in '98. And don't make me do the math, and I could have been wrong, but that was my thought. It was like, oh, it's our quinceañera. We should all look pretty and get ready for some kind of celebration.
From what I remember, the group was of a different configuration back at that time, William. So how did the piece morph over the time that you had been writing it?
Yeah, because we had it kind of set the way we were going to do it. We had a whole album's worth by 2014, which is when I became a daddy, and we went to Austria and we played it, and everything was cool and we were ready. And then of course other things happened and things fell apart, and then we put them back together. We tried it in different keys. We were like, oh, let's put it in a guitar key, and then the guitarist was like, no, put it back. We put it back, and I think for me it kind of unlocked itself when I was like, wait a minute, like give Max this melody. But then it was like, oh yeah, this just makes total sense now.
It's now a tapody.
Actually, if I can ask, when someone brings a track or a tune into the band, how does it usually get fleshed out? Like, especially you, Max. Like, how do you when someone says, "Here's a tune we're doing," what happens on your end?
Usually nowadays, because we've been playing together for such a long time, there is usually a consideration for what Max is going to do, because since Beaver and I are both doing rhythm, we have to coordinate and we have to make sure that we don't get in each other's way. So we always work that out, and it depends. Sometimes a tune is completely worked out, and then we just fine tune it, and sometimes it's very raw. And then we do need to do a lot of, shifting back and forth. But in this case, Beaver had it pretty well thought out, I guess. By the time he decided to make it a tapady, it was already pretty set.
Other than Max's obviously unique contribution, is there something when your listeners hear this that they'll say, oh yeah, that's definitely a Grupo Los Santos record? Like, is there something distinctive about this that makes it recognizable, or is it something that's slightly going into new areas for you guys that's like, oh, this is something that I wouldn't have expected them to do?
Well, I think the record itself is a new area, and not only this tune, but the whole record. It has more electric instruments, especially from my perspective, because I was playing acoustic bass and previously in the band, and now it's electric bass. And it certainly isn't the first time that we've used some overdubbing on our records, but for me anyway, this band became a more guitar heavy, so to speak, because bass guitar is the guitar as well, and so that allowed us to get into a completely different sound, and with all these guitar overdubs and whatnot, plus the electric bass, and I actually have effects on the electric bass because we're just, this is, it seems like at least in the last record and now this one, there's at least one tune that's just a blowout rock, like our Santos anthem, and this is the one for this record. And so I have built-in effects on my electric bass with the octave in it, so it's just like we're we're thrashing this one. So that, I feel like that's new. That's the energy of us like throwing down and thrashing is not new, but the sound, the way that we created it, is definitely different this time. But speaking of how the energy is not new, that kind of whatever crazy solo blowout that we try to find in every single tune practically is definitely there on this one as well. And so that's going to be familiar Santos territory for people. But it's just sounds, it has a different timbre to it now. It's a different presentation.
Yeah, I think feedback too this is probably the first Santos studio recording that has guitar feedback over the top. And yeah, like Dave said, blowout solos for sure, but the energy of the electric bass and what that brings, plus an extremely distorted guitar, that's just like, yeah, I think there's only one or two other tracks that are from studio records of ours that have any guitar distortion recorded, tracked to them. So this is pretty departureful.
I would also say in the way we use narrative on this record, it goes deeper and beyond the limits that we've used in the past because of the instrument choices, because of the effects, the dubbing, the fact that there is more, I would say, really sound painting going on in the entire record, and that everybody, each of us is thinking really, really, really very, very consciously about a story, or a painting a picture with each song and even with each solo, in this, like the colors are pretty bright, and it's kind of raw and gritty because it's kind of rock inspired, not only obviously, but that's the sound, but other tunes are, have a completely different palette, but it's a different palette from what we have done in the past 20 years. It's like a new launch. It's like we just took off the carrier and we're like, whoa, now we're going beyond into the orange clouds,
Mm-hmm.
It's very different.
William, you have anything to add to that?
I got lost with the orange cloud. I'm lost in the orange cloud. I don't really know what we're talking about.
I'm feeling the orange cloud.
Just embrace the orange cloud, man. That's all you need to do. Just embrace it.
It's your friend.
For me, the song it's a very linear progression. Like there's lots of inside references. I guess when we first did it, the sax had the melody, and the initial kind of fanfare at the beginning was Pete on an ebow, and then when in the studio we were like, well, why not have a choir of ebow guitars, which is I don't know, ELO or Brian May, Queen, all these weird things that you wouldn't expect in a jazz record if we are jazz, which is another conversation, I suppose. And traditionally we have been conservative in our recording kind of strategies, like a jazz mentality. Like it should sound like we were going to do it live, and then we were like, well, let's overdub bata and then reverse engineer. So how the heck are we going to play this live with bata? And kind of moving even further and being like, who cares? Like if it sounds great and it tells the story, orange cloud or not, let's do that. And Pete and I got into all sorts of shenanigans on his solo where there's this delay that kicks in that takes a phrase of his, and then he's like, oh, but when it goes to this chord, then it's not right. And I'm like, all right. And I'm tuning the delay and and then I think it just makes it if that's the orange cloud, then yes, now I'm in the orange cloud because that's just insane. And yes, do it some more,
That's exactly what I'm talking about, my friend.
Yeah, so I feel like this is basically okay, new new things, and less tied or less precious with like the Cuban aspects, which are still there, but they're so far in the background. They're like subliminal for us, because there's generally not someone going, even though that's what I was thinking when I wrote it.
I think the previous instrumentation of the group, where you have acoustic bass and where you have an acoustic, wind instrument, is the respect among us was all there in terms of when we were in the studio, where we were really going to be focusing on capturing a great live moment. And, stepping on toes with each other was really a lot of it too. Not just, clave police or whatever, but like, really being respectful of sound so that all of us had space in the mix for what we were doing. And the change that came about as a result of electric bass and then, and a lack of the big powerful wind instrument voice was about like, let's crank it to 11 or in places, let's go for the limits of some of this stuff.
I think that another important aspect of this tune is the kind of introduction of Max as like an integral part of this band. Now, maybe that's too subtle for most people to know about, because even from my perspective as a band member, it seems like Max has always been a part of this band. But in terms of the group conception and even the composition and the arrangement, whatever, it was always like Max, well, do we include Max or do we not include Max, and if so, how do we do it? But for this record, and from this, that moment on when the band changed, it was just a quartet with Max. And so, to me, this tune really showcases that, because Max got the melody, or he's one of the melody players now. And I know we already discussed that, but I think that that's really an important aspect of this tune and an aspect of this band, that it's like really a quartet that includes body percussion and tap and all the great things that Max do, which is very unique.
Cool. Well, I've been a big fan of this band for forever, and these videos that have been coming out have been really great. So it's great to see you guys ramp up for another project like this, and I hope a lot of more people discover the amazing work that you guys do. So thanks again for chatting with me this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Menon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.